Okay, yeah. Southside, yeah. That's where I spend downtime, yeah. I mean it, night the rap. I check the podcast for the smoke, yeah. I don't wanna fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Wow.
I cannot tell you how excited we are right now because in the building right now, we have a person to our left. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Hold
gracious
on,
golly wally.
Everybody, let's take a moment of silence.
Not a moment.
Listen. So in the world that we are living in right now,
Yes.
there is a program called the MacArthur Fellows Program.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, we all know
Now,
that.
it's also known as the MacArthur Fellowship.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it's colloquially known as the Genius Grant.
Yes, the Genius Grant, of course.
And so it's a prize awarded annually. And it's typically between 20 and 30 individuals.
Yep.
That are working in any field who have shown extraordinary originality.
Yes.
And dedication in their creative pursuits.
That's right. Innovation. Yes.
And it's marked by the capacity for self-direction.
Yes.
And they have to be a citizen of the United States. So
Of
the
course.
nationalism is tied
There we
in
go.
there
To
as
it,
well.
of
Of course, it has to. It wouldn't
America
be,
gonna America.
would
There
not,
it is.
Yeah, it would not
America
be
gonna
America.
be America.
Listen, it would not. Yeah, you cannot be.
But we must admit, America is the greatest country in America. We do have to admit that. Go ahead.
We cannot give you a Genius Grant if you're not from America.
Yes.
But according to the foundation's website, right?
He went to a whole website.
Yes,
for
we
this.
had to. We
Fellowship,
prepared for
the
this.
fellowship is not a reward for past accomplishments, but rather an investment in a person's originality,
Yes.
insight,
Yes.
and potential.
Yes.
But it also says such potential is based on a track record of significant accomplishments, and the current prize is about, I think, $800,000 paid in 5 years, like in installments. It used to be like $500K. I think they raised it up to $800K.
Gotcha.
But all I'm saying is, I'm saying that to say that in heaven, I think that there is going to be a MacArthur Fellows program.
I think so.
fellow.
Absolutely.
Now, it's not going to be called that. It
Of
might
course.
be called like the Yahweh, the Pauline
yes, or the
Fellows program.
the Michael, the
Melchizedek.
Exactly. That's right.
I don't know.
Hezekiah, for sure.
It could be any one of those things.
Sure.
But I think that in heaven, there's going to be that kind of grant program.
Absolutely.
Right?
Okay.
And I think that when we get to heaven and the angels get up on the heavenly stage and they
Yes.
start saying, we're going to announce to you all
Yes.
who is going to be the recipient of this grant.
And there's only 30 of all eternity.
Yeah. And they said, listen,
It's only 30.
There's only 30
Yes.
in eternity, but I think one of the
Did
angels
you have the 144,000? That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole nother thing.
This is
That's
the
a whole.
30.
This is a 30.
This is right.
And I think that as the angel is saying that, Michael,
Yes.
the archangel, is going to come up and whisper in his ear, and the angel is going to say, Michael just told me there's only one.
Oh wow. Y'all tripping,
Right?
now.
And as they have,
The way-
he said there's only one. Right? They're
I
gonna
might give
ask
it to Paul.
They're gonna ask David to come up and open their envelope.
John. Yes.
And he is gonna open that, and it's gonna say Esau
Esau
McCaulley.
Can I make a request? I'm just happy to get into the kingdom. I'll take the 800,000 here and just go into glory on the side.
know that's right.
I just want to be. I want to be in there. I already know awards.
Which is exactly what you would expect someone like Esau
Exactly
to
say.
say.
He's gonna
Right
say,
now,
"I'll take the
that's why he's
800,000,
getting the reward.
and then when I get in heaven, God can just make me the garbage man." That's what he's gonna say.
Of course.
And so, but I think that grant is gonna go to him.
Yes.
And then we are gonna have someone else come up.
Yes.
It might be KB, and he's gonna say, "God just told me that the theologian in residence in heaven is Esau McCaulley."
It's Esau McCaulley in heaven.
In heaven.
He's going to be
And-
parsing
and-
not only the Greek and the Hebrew and Aramaic.
oh my
he's
gosh.
going to be parsing
The
the
heavenly
heavenly languages.
And then
We're talking tongues of fire.
And then Paul is going to come up and say, man, 80% of the New Testament, I thought that I had something going.
I was
but the
snapping.
stuff that you, I thought I was snapping.
Romans
but the
8,
stuff
I
that
thought
you
I was
was
in my
writing
bag.
in New York Times and then reading while black, Paul's going to say, reading while black. I read that 100 times and I'm not even black.
He was 10.
Paul's going to say, that's a foreign concept to me, Esau. When
black in
I was
America.
here,
Yeah, let's say, let him try to buy food in
I
Alabama.
never thought a Gentile could write like this. But
Brothers and
I just
sisters.
want to say, brothers and sisters, we welcome our brother Esau McCaulley. Make some noise for my man.
Make some noise for the man one time.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me.
Welcome.
I really appreciate it. That was way too much.
No, it was not enough, bro. It's not enough.
I remember when I wrote my first book,
Uh-huh.
my pastor, Charlie Dates, put
Shout out
an
Charlie.
endorsement on there. I said, that's too nice. I didn't even post it.
Really?
It's on the back of the book.
It was
Really?
too
But
kind.
I didn't share it on social. Like, I don't know if I deserve that. That was way too much.
Bro, see, and again, was what you would expect from him.
I was like,
and let me just say one last thing, Doctor. There's only a few people that I listen to, and they're profound. How profound they are, their ability, their insight, their genius is so. It's so powerful that it becomes distracting, and it makes me begin to question my own humanity. Let me tell you something, brother. I wrote a little book called Dangerous Jesus.
I endorsed.
And
I endorsed it.
That you endorsed. And I don't know how you endorsed it, because you must have been reading this thing like, man, this young man has a long way to go.
No, don't do that.
I
Don't do
wrote
that.
this little book called Dangerous Jesus, and as I was writing it, I think I wrote the book in like 3 months, and I was like 8 hours a day, like out on the patio writing. Feel like I'm getting in my bag. I'm using the flowers of rhetoric.
Yep,
I'm talking alliterations and the analogies, and I'm like, man,
Politicons.
rappers need to write more books, because we can bring the poetry that these guys ain't doing it like this. Cats ain't writing like this, brother.
You opened it.
I opened up your newest. We got reading while Black read that, but also I have How Far to the Promised Land here. And as I'm reading it, I said, God, you love to humble your people, don't you? You love to take those that feel like they are standing and tell them that they're not standing at all. Because you are one of probably 3 authors that I read that when I read them, I say, why am I trying to be an author? I need to give all my ideas to him and let him write the books, because this man is not just some, contributor, okay?
Yeah.
This man has perfected the art of putting books together with culture and perspective and
that's true,
insight
though.
and theological weightiness.
Yeah.
It literally is
And Flowers of Rhetoric all in one.
all in one.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to read. It is powerful for the soul. And I know we do these big intros, but I am not joking, y'all.
We've talked about this with each other.
We always try to honor our guests when they come onto the show, but which we will continue to do, and we mean what we say, even though we
Right.
use
Yeah.
humor.
Yeah.
But I am dead serious right now. One of the best writers alive that God has given us, okay? And writer to writer. Now, I mostly write records, but I am a writer. Is this man that we have on our podcast right now, Esau McCaulley. This is, you will not be able to put this down. It is moving. It is reading a movie, bro. That's what it feels
that's what
like.
it felt like. Yeah.
And so we are too honored to have you here, and also grateful that you're on our side, brother.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Amen.
that we got the penis, because if you was writing for the enemy, bro, there might not be no Christians in America, bro.
You know what?
Y'all come for me. If I'm ever tripping, you come for me. If I was actually thinking about, I went on a run yesterday, and I like save certain songs for certain parts on the run.
Sure.
And like the last half mile or whatever, because I'm slow.
Hey, as long as you're going.
Ain't alone.
Is actually the song "Daddy" from your
Really?
latest album, because it touches so many of the same themes
It does.
in the book.
Yes.
And I was like, man, I hope everybody listens to it. I said, but they listen to that song, they might have got the book. So it's really interesting to think about like how much the different things that God has gifted us to do, because I feel like the music that you give me is the soundtrack to my writing.
Oh, I love it.
And so the song came
Man, a
out
little
after
tear just came.
after,
Yeah, that's good.
after I had finished the song came. I heard that song after I had finished the book.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, man, I wish I had that. But I listened.
Powerful.
Yeah. So anyway, so thank
That's
you.
powerful, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we got Esau here. I know it means that you chomping at the bit.
No, yeah.
Can I just say one thing? I'm going to ask this question before we get going.
Do your thing, bro.
So we know Esau McCaulley as the theologian, the public thinker. You know him from the Atlantic, you know him from New York Times, you know him from his best-selling books. My question for what we know you as in what you do in this book, it seems like this is the most transparent work you've ever done.
Oh yeah.
By far?
By far.
What went into moving from now? So you're helping us think through the issues of the day
Yeah.
to now using your own soul in some ways.
Yeah. I think it's in some ways it's like, I think a lot about music, even though I'm not musically gifted. And like different artists can use different rhyme patterns, different ways of communicating. Sometimes they sing, sometimes they rap, sometimes the meter changes.
Right.
And so when I approach a topic, I'm asking, what do I need to do to communicate the message that God has given me in that moment?
Yes.
And so when Reading While Black came out, I felt like the culture was going through a moment where they're saying, is the God we serve a friend and not an enemy in the pursuit of justice? And so, and do we have to read against the grain of the Bible to find justice? Or is the God of the Bible on the side of justice?
Come on, sir.
And so I felt like there was a lot of African-American Christians in particular who wrestled with that question in light of the stuff that was happening in the culture.
Right. Yes.
And so I felt like we needed a theological argument in that moment.
Yes.
But I didn't realize it at the time, but you fast forward 7 to 8 years, and the question, the issues aren't really as theological as it used to be.
Yes.
They're experiential.
Yes.
And so we've gone through some things really in the course of those same 5 to 7 years.
Right.
And they're asking, given the suffering that I've endured, is it still possible for me to say that God is good?
Message.
And so in that kind of context, you don't come to people with a bunch of Bible verses. That's pastorally insensitive. It could be, right?
Yeah.
Some people aren't ready to hear that.
Right.
And so if you might be surprised, because if you read Reading My Black, it's all Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's like no, other than like the a few places, there's almost no Bible quoted in the entirety of How Far to the Promised Land.
Yeah.
Because I felt like there was something that could be revealed in the telling of my story.
Yes.
That might be universal. Because sometimes the other thing that happens is people meet us at a certain point in our lives.
Yes.
And they extrapolate back from that point of our lives what we've actually been through.
Ooh.
And so they kind of say, oh, he's a Christian because Christianity works for him or her. Right? They kind of slid into the kingdom. They have this success or whatever. We're going to say, oh, that's why they're Christian.
Yes.
Right.
And it could be like we're saying God is good because of the current situation that I'm in.
Ooh.
And I want to say, well, no. God was actually good all the way back from the beginning.
Come on,
Right.
Through generations in my family. And so when I say God is good now, it's in the entire context of the life that you saw lived.
Ooh.
And so what I really want to say is like, How Far to the Promised Land is really the depiction of the work of God in the lives of my family over generations.
Yes.
Right.
And the fact that even if they don't get to what we might consider like this place of material success, God was at work in them, and that work itself is beautiful.
I love it.
And so God, maybe I'll put it this way, God isn't only beautiful when we get what we want. God is good even in the midst of the struggle, even if we don't arrive at this place. There's this verse, there's tons of verses that float around in my head. They're looking for a city whose builder and maker is God.
Right.
But they didn't get there, right?
Yeah.
Like they didn't get there.
Yep.
And so in some ways, the book is about the depiction of different people in my family who are journeying to a city.
Yes.
And it's my observing that journey and in some places participating in it. And so I really wanted to show through that. And I'll put it this way. This is the way I've been. I kind of figured out how I want to explain it to people. The book that we all think about is these famous conversion stories.
Right.
Surprised by Joy, like C.S. Lewis in Oxford.
Yeah.
Being evangelized by some of the greatest writers in human history.
Yeah. Right.
And we all kind of go, this is me. Like, bro, Tolkien ain't evangelizing you, bro.
Tolkien is writing you letters personally.
That's not. So in other words, but we read that story and we say, oh, that's how somebody found God in Oxford. But I said, I didn't find God in Oxford.
Right.
I found God in Northwest Huntsville.
Come on.
And the world that God came into in Northwest Huntsville was had anti-black racism.
Right.
So I have to describe the racism that existed in the South so you can understand that's the world into which God came.
Right.
I had to describe family trauma so that you know that's the world into which God came. God didn't come to me after I escaped all of that and say, now I'll listen to you.
Right.
He was there. And so people go, why are you talking about racism in the book about it? Because when I'm asking, is God good? I'm asking, is God good given what's happening to us right now?
Yes.
And is God good given the ways in which happening to us right now? Because the book spans 3 generations. How, given the fact that this problem that I'm experiencing happened to my grandparents,
Right.
happened to my great-grandparents.
Right.
Yes.
And so, at least for a certain kind of Black Christian who's coming to God in the South, God has to come into that broken world.
Yes.
And so How Far to the Promised Land has to depict that broken world
Yes.
so people can understand that's the world into which God entered. Because sometimes we just think of God as simply an intellectual problem, right?
Sure.
And so like, I'm saying, that's when I say C.S. Lewis is such an interesting story because that's what we think it means to have a conversion experience.
Yes.
Basically in a white context, struggling with existential questions.
Yes.
Right.
And I was like, well, what does it look like for God to come into the life of a young Black boy in Alabama whose dad isn't around?
Right.
Come on, sir.
And so that's the reason why I talk about the reason that I felt my story is important, because there can be a sense in which we feel like our settings aren't the kinds of world into which God enters.
Yes.
Right.
And we have to go to another world to find God. And so I was trying to depict that through the form of my story. So it's, I mean, I could use 1,000 different analogies. It's the same thing about like Joseph.
Right.
Joseph comes to God, makes sense of God in the context of familial betrayal. Family played him.
Yep.
And he's in a context where he's under consistent surveillance and oppression.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And being mistreated, being falsely accused of stuff.
Right.
Yes.
And he has to make sense of God in that context.
Right.
Yes.
And Joseph's, like, most of Joseph's story, he isn't talking about God.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
He kind of, when the woman comes, he said, like, he's like, I'm not going to play my God here.
Right.
But then that's it. You get to the middle part, he kind of goes, oh, I didn't do anything to get into jail, but he just talking about, I'm in jail. I'm innocent.
Yes.
And so, but when you get to the end of his life, he gives a theological interpretation of the entire thing that's unfolded as a narrative.
So true.
He goes, what you meant for evil. So then he says, what seemed like a haphazard series of events, he came to recognize as God's work in his life. But if you just read it, it's like, man, he got betrayed by his family. He goes to jail. He gets put out of jail. He's like doing this. He's doing that. It just feels random.
That's right.
Yeah.
What could be theological?
Yeah, theological.
About that?
But then at the end, and once you have that theological meaning, you see how the whole thing works together.
Yes.
Right.
Because if he isn't falsely accused, he doesn't go to jail. If he doesn't go to jail, he doesn't meet the person. He doesn't meet the person. You see the whole thing.
Right.
And if his family doesn't betray him at the beginning, his family dies.
Yes.
So the entire thing begins to make sense, but you got to get to the end of the story.
Yes.
And so how far to the promised land, in a sense, is an unfolding of things that looks a little bit random.
Yes.
And like, you have to get to the end to kind of see like the thing. Hopefully people like the book. And
It's amazing.
It clicks into place at the end.
Yes, it definitely does. Man, one of the things that I think is a continual theme in the book, I think there's one part even in the jacket that says, what does each person's struggle to build a life regardless of outcome teach us about being human?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think that we don't talk about enough as Christians, at least from the circles in which we came from, is how messy people's lives in the Bible were.
Yes.
So, when you think about mess, you may think about David and Bathsheba or whatever, some of the big things, but we don't think about the mess as like, I think I was talking to you one day and like, what does it mean that Lot offered his daughters to the men of Sodom?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yes.
How do we think about Abram sending Hagar and Ishmael away?
Yeah.
And then God finding her?
I think the Christians fundamentally misread the Old Testament. The real question you would ask yourself is, who is not a mess in the Bible?
Ooh.
In the Old Testament.
It's all over the place.
No, like seriously, like every last one. And so what the Bible actually depicts in the Old Testament is an impending catastrophe, often like thwarted by the intervention of the goodness of God.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so you see character after character who are mess things up.
Yeah.
You go through the kings, you might get like Josiah. Like if you start just running through the list. And so what is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of that?
Right.
It's because we're looking for an actual real king in the kingdom. And God's like, I'm going to show you like what happens when y'all in charge of stuff.
Yes.
Right.
I'm not going to let you completely mess it up because I got a plan. So he intervenes to save us from catastrophe. But you see in the story like these broken characters, but even in their brokenness, and this is the tricky part, you're not excusing the sin of the Bible, characters in the Bible, or the sin that we have in our day.
Clearly.
We're saying that each person's life and the struggle to find meaning is important and it reveals something. So a person's life can be instructive either in what you should do or in what you shouldn't do.
Yeah, boy.
And so sometimes people assume that the characters in the Bible are always instructive in what you should do. Instead of saying, you know what I ought to learn from this story is I don't need to do that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I don't need to defend or minimize. Like every couple of years we argue about David and Bathsheba. Because we're trying to somehow like rescue David. Like David's reputation ain't what we're trying to save. It's the glory of God.
Right.
And so you can say, no, what David did was foul, and that's the point.
Right. That's the point.
That's the point.
Would you also make that argument for my brothers and my distant brothers and sisters that are caught in the manosphere right now? So you got these dudes who are advocating for polygamy again in ways that are new, especially for ethnic folks. Okay, if you're out in Utah, but it's weird for me to hear a bunch of brothers that are talking about, having a harem, and then you have a lot of what they would call pick-me, sisters.
So I would say,
I want to be a part
of the
Bible.
Usually show
you point to the Bible. What do you say to that?
I mean, first of all, it's theologically unserious. And sometimes you got to say stuff. People, it's the same as like weed is from the earth. It's like, it actually sounds deep until you press the issue, right? Lots of things you can make from the earth that can kill you,
right? Like cocaine.
Like cocaine.
From the earth to Colombia.
You know what I'm saying? But it'll kill you. But so one of the things I would say is like, if you actually, that's what I'm saying, you read the narrative.
Yeah.
There is not one time, and I've said this on mics across the country, no one's emailed me back. There's not one time in the Bible where you see people with multiple wives and it goes great.
It never does. It's always a mess.
You never see them saying like, I love this. Like nobody, like in other words, there's always drama.
Yep.
There's always drama.
Always drama, always mess.
And so they conclude, sometimes like the narrative of the Bible teaches you about what you see. And so you got to go, this is a mess. So you get to the New Testament, they kind of go, you know what? We're not going to do this no more.
Yeah, right.
But not only that, if you look at the actual redemptive scope of the narrative, in the beginning, so I'll try not to go full. I'll go full Bible because I'm a Southside Rabbi.
Southside Rabbi, baby.
So let me speak about this. They come to Jesus, right? This is in the New Testament. And they're arguing with Jesus about divorce. Remember this? Like, under what circumstances can a man divorce a woman? And they have a passage in mind, right? So they want to do proof texting, right?
Right.
Like we hear the verse, interpret it. Jesus said, I'm not going to sit here and argue about your verse where you chose the ground of fighting. He said, actually, to talk about marriage, you got to go to creation. Ooh. He goes, in the beginning, it wasn't this way. So he goes to the Genesis narrative. In the Genesis narrative, he's talking about divorce. He said there was no divorce at creation. Now, I'm not going to argue about, like, divorce, we understand. It's a different context. I'm not saying if you did divorce, that's not it. It's an analogy.
Sure. Yeah.
But he says, so he says, rather than looking at the exceptions to the rule in Deuteronomy, look at God's intention in Genesis.
Right.
So when you begin to ask yourself, what was God's intention in marriage?
Yes.
You get Genesis.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And so in Genesis, there's no polygamy.
Yes.
So where does polygamy come from? It's a result of the fall.
Yes.
And so everywhere you see polygamy, you see the manifestation of human fallenness.
That's right.
Hence, as you go through the narrative, it's always a train wreck. It's not like David has a bunch of wives or Solomon has a bunch of wives and he stayed committed to Yahweh. He actually gets a bunch of wives and he becomes a heretic.
Absolute heretic.
So it's not. So in other words, I need a proof of concept.
That's right. Where does it work?
I
remember, it's so interesting. Even the open marriage thing, which kind of is a cousin to this.
Yeah. It is a cousin.
I remember people would proof text Will and Jada for years, man. I remember
all the time.
It's working for them. It's working for them. And we couldn't say, no, it never works. Everything I know, it never works. I don't really know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if they got some special grace.
Right.
They may have found some hidden apocryphal book that perhaps it told us that it was okay in these certain situations.
Maybe First Maccabees.
I don't know where it found. It ain't in my Bible.
I read Maccabees, but it ain't gonna help you.
But man, what you see happening in the culture right now is how evil that institution of opening up the covenant for anybody to take part in.
I think that we are struggling with despair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I talk about in order to be a Christian.
Yeah.
In order to be a Christian, what God actually has to do is to convert your imagination. You have to be able to picture the life with God as beautiful and good and worthy of pursuit. And that is how you live. It's not even about like how much Bible you know, because you can grow in your knowledge of Bible over time, as long as you're saying whatever little bit I know, I'm trying to live that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when, for whatever reason, despair sets in, and the vision of the life with God becomes seemingly unsustainable or no longer appealing, then we start to say, well, what are ways in which I can make life livable? And then we pursue different ways of making life seem livable. And even when those ways hurt us, we don't necessarily stop to reconsider our actions. We say, okay, here's another way to manage. Because we're all hurting.
That's right.
And like the different ways in which people try to manage the pain. And so what I try to do is look at the hurt or the disappointment that led people to go down the road. Yeah. And to be truthful, like there's lots of ways in which the church didn't do a good job of teaching us how to have healthy relationships.
Yes.
Right.
And the failures of those things lead people to all kinds of mess.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, and this, maybe I'll put it this way, just because someone can articulate your pain, it doesn't mean that they can necessarily fix you.
Ooh.
And so what people can do is, because this is common grace, you can look in the culture and see.
Satan is great at that too.
This brother spitting though right now.
You can look
Satan
at the culture
is great at
and say like,
articulating your pain
this
too,
is the pain. And so once someone articulates your pain, you sometimes listen to their solution. But a doctor can come to you and say, hey man, I think your ankle's broke. I need you to take 3 pieces of broccoli. Well, hold on.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That ain't how that
I need
works.
you to take these iron pills.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? So like, but what I think happens, people get on these podcasts and they start talking about frustrations that we all may feel.
And then we can resonate with that.
We can resonate
with that.
part.
Yep.
But to be honest, some of that, I don't want to get too deep in it, but some of even the stuff that they resonate with is like borderline misogynistic. Like,
That's true.
bro,
Well,
you shouldn't be co-signing this
That's
part.
right. No, because it's a misogynist listening to a misogynist.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like,
That's
it's
It's true.
It sees
It's
me
true.
and my man is.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
like, bro,
That's a
like,
fact.
all y'all need therapy.
Yeah, everybody, right.
You missed me on the pain part.
Right.
You missed me. I didn't identify at the beginning.
Right.
But I can see, you know, it's like, I talk a lot about where I grew up. And where I grew up, it's so interesting, the intellectual community that shapes you.
Yeah.
So when I'm growing up in Huntsville, the people around me are like, you could be a Christian, right? But the Nation of Islam was in Huntsville. And so the Nation of Islam resonated with people precisely because of the way they talked about Black oppression.
Right.
And so I can say, I'm not going to join the nation, but I understand the kinds of things that will lead people to kind of say, but then you get into the nation, you find out there's anti-Semitism in there. You find all the other stuff that's in there.
Yes.
And so what they hook people with, and once they get you in, they begin to manipulate you. And so for me, I have sympathy for people who go to these Black nationalist groups because I understand the kinds of frustrations that they experience, because I experienced them too.
Sure.
And what I'm trying to say is, maybe this is, of course, right? I think the answer to your frustration is Jesus.
Yes.
Right? That he actually can critique the things that you're upset about, but also critiques you.
Yeah.
Like one of my
sir.
it's funny, like you
Take
talk
your
about the favorite parts of the book, but they're actually the favorite parts of your life. There's this part where I talk about my conversion. I've gone to college and I've read all the books. And so I know about, humanism and all of these things and these kind of intellectual critiques of structural racism. And I knew all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I had all the tools that could critique society, to tell everybody what they had done wrong to me.
Yeah.
But I recognized that those same tools were limited in their ability to analyze me. And what brought me back to the faith was that the vision of Jesus allowed me to take both my own sin and the world's sin equally seriously. And then that the grace that was shown to me was always a mediating factor.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, whenever I just want to fall completely into anger and frustration and rage and say, y'all, forget all of this.
Yes.
It's always what God said, he didn't forget you. And so I have to always leave out this possibility of change. And so for me, what I want to say is to be an effective Christian artist or writer or thinker, you actually have to articulate the real problem. This is where people resonate.
Yes.
This is where you can't lie about what's going on.
Yes.
Right.
Hence the discussion of racism and family trauma.
Yes.
But then you have to say, okay, now that I've articulated what is wrong and you resonate with that, I'm going to explain to you how Jesus is the solution to that problem.
I love it.
And then at that point, let them decide.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, if here's the Jesus solution,
Yes.
Yeah.
and here's the misogynistic solution.
Yeah.
You pick.
Yes.
You pick.
Yeah.
Who has the more compelling
Yeah, who has the
way?
most
Right.
compelling? Because
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with saying, I can just present to you that which changed me.
Yeah.
And if I've done that with integrity and I've not manipulated you, I've been as honest as I can.
Yeah.
Which is why, and it's not taking everything back to the book. But I want you to understand like why I wrote things in a certain way.
I love it.
Right.
So there are parts in the book where God is not mentioned at all.
Yeah.
Whole chapters.
Yeah.
Because at the time I wasn't thinking about God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just living, right?
Yes,
You know, like
yes.
sometimes you just living in the South. Like
Right.
police pulling up. I'm not praying to God. I'm just like, man, why this police officer pulling me over?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but that depiction of that frustration of being a young Black man in the South who gets pulled over for driving while Black consistently.
Yeah.
That is what I experienced. And that's the anger that builds inside of you. My dad, That's another. So you have these things that are at war within you.
Yeah.
So that when God comes into that story, God comes into that story.
I love it.
And I think there's a lot of people who, at least when I was taught, is we kind of we edit out the difficult parts of our lives.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh man, God is good."
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Like, how are you blessed and highly favored? Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But we're heading towards Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And like, I don't know what's going to come out. Maybe after Thanksgiving when this comes out. But we're recording before Thanksgiving, breaking the third wall or whatever. And yes, I'm going to have a dinner with my family.
Yes.
And I'm going to think about my blessings.
Yes.
I'm also going to think about the people who I used to eat Thanksgiving with who aren't alive anymore.
Mm.
And to be a Christian is to say that God comforts me in that pain.
Yes.
Not just that God gave my family a nice meal that we can now share.
Yes.
Right.
It's better than the meal that I had when I was a kid.
Yes.
And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, I got tired of, just be honest, man.
Come on, man.
Yeah, but I wanted to tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Tell the truth. Yes.
And maybe I'll put it this way. Tell the truth once you got a handle on the truth.
Yeah.
What I mean by that, there was a long time where a lot of the stories that are in the book, I couldn't find God in them. Sometimes you just go through stuff and you just survive it.
Yeah.
And you're not really ready to talk about it, because when you talk about it, like, the story takes over you.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And you can see the person is just actually just processing stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And you gotta say, I'm gonna let you process it, but I don't actually get any, like, I'm more ministering to you as you process than I'm actually being blessed by it.
Yeah.
And so I had to get to the place where it wasn't just a showy display of of trauma,
Right.
but it was a way that I could tell the story and bend the story to God's purposes.
Mm.
And so when I say, like, be honest, it doesn't mean that everyone needs to share their story, because you can you see places where people are sharing stuff, you kind of go, bro, this ain't
held on to that one.
You're like, we're not ready. You weren't ready. Like, they weren't.
You weren't ready.
You weren't ready to share it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have it. It's fine. Like,
It's
we
not
just survive
buttoned up,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
I
But
think,
you're in process.
yeah, I think one of the people who I've met in this, like, kind of Christian world recently is Rachel Den Hollander.
Of
course.
Yes.
Love her to death.
Love Rachel. And her husband.
But she went through a real trauma.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And she talks about that trauma for the sake of ministering to other people.
Yes.
But that's because she still has an ongoing, I mean, like, everyone has to deal with the,
Sure.
but she can do that. It doesn't mean that every survivor has to or is ready to tell their story.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or that even she was immediately ready to share their story.
Right.
There's a process of spiritual healing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you get to the place where you can say, okay, I'm now ready to talk about this in a way that I can use the evil that happened to me to do good in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's, when I say be honest, that's what I mean. I'm not saying overshare. I'm not saying it's your responsibility to share. But I'm saying that if you got to the place where, and this isn't like some kind of weird God ordained this thing so that can happen. It's saying, like, that which didn't destroy me can become my testimony. And sometimes you get to the place where all you can say is it didn't destroy me.
Right.
And for a long time, the events that happened in that book were simply things that didn't destroy me.
Yeah.
But I finally got to the place where I felt like, you know what? This can actually become a testimony that's useful to people.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe this is me tripping. I don't want to get in your business.
Yeah.
But I'm allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, do you think that you could have written that song, Dad, in your first record?
No. I feel like I needed time to process the wound.
Yeah.
I also needed time for, this is crazy. Let me just say this real quick. I love that the angle of this book is really showing how God's goodness doesn't recuse itself when bad things are happening or unexplainable or tragedy or just bad systems. God's goodness isn't waiting for things to be great and then he's good. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I have experienced that in my own life because there are things that I would curse that happened to me that I kiss now.
Yeah.
Okay. So my parents divorced. I found myself daddyless for a long time. He kept I had like a stint where my dad would show up a little bit. started talking about child support. Man disappeared like that Homer Simpson meme into the bushes. And I thought I was fine, brother. I was like, I'm 16 now. Like, then I found Jesus, and I was like, I'm not sitting around here worried about that. My dad don't call me, or I don't have a daddy that I can. And even when I was around my friends that did have dads, none of them, I didn't feel jealous or nothing. It wasn't until I was 27 years old, and I was with Hameen, actually. We were preparing for a hurricane, and his family and a few other families went to my house to shelter in place, because we have hurricane shelters. Or excuse me, hurricane shutters. Yeah. And Amin and I are outside trying to put these hurricane shutters up. And I realized that I had never climbed a ladder before in my life at 27 years old.
Yeah. And we had to climb high too. It wasn't like climbing.
And the hurricane's coming, y'all.
That's right. I was like, hold up. So is somebody supposed to hold the bottom? Is it supposed to be this shaky? Because if you had never climbed a ladder before, it moves. You know what I'm saying? So me and Amin taking turns going up 3 steps.
Yeah, right.
And then getting off. We got neighbors walking by that
because we're doing this outside.
We need help. We're like, no, I don't need no help. I got it.
Yeah.
And so I got to the bottom. I was like, man, I got 3 families here. Me and Amin never been up a ladder. Man. It's my responsibility to make sure these shutters are up. And I said, let me call my dad. And my heart broke into a million pieces because I said, I can't call him. And then that was the start, brother, of an unraveling, a 3 or 4 year unraveling that other sort of like surrogate fathers in my life, as they begin to fail me and hurt me, and as life developed and I didn't have the dad to help me, but I also didn't have the dad to be proud of me. Yeah. I'm building things and accomplishing things, getting plaques and awards, and I can't feel it, bro, because the approval that I was looking for was never going to come.
One of the things that was interesting when I said drop. I'm talking too many artists.
Hey, you are an artist, so you can use it.
Hip hop culture, baby.
When Reading My Black came out, I don't want to say too much about the timeline, but Reading My Black, I wrote it after my father died, or in the context of my father's death. And so when I got to the end of the book, and it was time to write the dedication. The dedication to Reading My Black is actually dedicated to my father. Wow. And it says, this book is dedicated to my father who died before we ever got to see our name in print. Whatever else I am, I remain your son. Now, for years since Reading My Black came out, the people who've read that have said, wow, you and your dad must have had this great relationship. It must have been amazing. But it was actually not. We didn't have a relationship at all. Mm-hmm. But that was me saying, I forgive you. In the beginning of the book. And so when people say, like, why did you write How Far to the Promised Land? It's like, bro, I was actually writing that book. Like, in other words,
I've been writing that book.
I've been writing that book. And like the eulogy that is described that opens up How Far to the Promised Land occurs in the context of Reading My Black. Like, although Reading My Black is written, it comes out in the opposite. In my life, my father dies, then Reading My Black comes out, and then like all of the public stuff happens after that. Yeah. And so he didn't see any of it. He dies before any of this happens. Yeah. And so there is a sense in which it's an incomplete story. Yeah. It's the first chapter. It's the first opening story. My father dies on a truck driving trip. Yeah. Coming back from California to Alabama. Like, if it wasn't my actual life, it would sound like a movie.
Right.
A brother who says he's trying to come back.
Yes, man.
But he dies on the way. Yes. Like that whole idea of like he's trying to become that which he always was, but he runs out of time. Yep. And if there's actually a hidden warning, like there's a hidden warning.
Yes,
don't make me go too deep into the book. Yeah. Like when I talk about he ran out of road.
You did say that.
The point of that is like, bro, y'all need to go home. Because like it opens like with the road trip. Y'all need to go home while you still got a chance.
While you can.
Because we think that we have all of this time. And people always ask me like, would you have written How Far to the Promised Land if he hadn't died? And I was like, I don't know. Because I don't know how our story would have ended.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like maybe there's no book because we have this I don't know.
Sure.
But like he literally calls my mom.
Yeah.
Like when I tell y'all this stuff actually happened.
Yeah, it feels like a movie when you're reading it.
When I say to you, my mama was going into the movie theater with her sister. Mm-hmm. He calls my mom and says, I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know. It's so funny. I wrote the book so long ago. I think they edited it out. Maybe no, it should be in there. He says to her, "All I can do is pray."
That is what he's. Yeah, all I can do is pray.
But so, bro, he doesn't know that's the last thing he's gonna say, but he actually says it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, bro, you actually died on a truck driving trip in California, trying to apologize to the woman you mistreated your entire life.
Yeah.
Talking about prayer.
Yep.
And nobody takes it seriously because, like, man, whatever. I mean,
No,
that's if you know how like black women talk. She like, man, ain't nobody thinking about you. I'm finna go see this movie.
You said that's what your mom said. She's like, man, ain't nobody thinking about you, Otis.
You know what I'm talking about? That exact energy. That exact energy.
Right.
And it's just like, I'm like, you know what? What I was able to say, maybe this is important to me. This is why I say I was able to write it. Even though he didn't get there is something about that attempt to turn that is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And the reason this is important to me is because when you come from where I come from, people can encourage you to toss your entire childhood and neighborhood and community away and make your new life with them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're one of those guys who escaped and now you made it into this place.
That's that black exception.
Yeah, like, come and be in here and define yourself completely by this community.
Right.
And I'm like, but I love those people.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like, I actually love, so like, I didn't want to just do like a black, we down bad story.
Right.
I want to say, and this is actually true, was I often sad? Yeah, I was. But was I happy? Man, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I talk about this in the book. My high school was the littest place.
Yeah. Felt like that when I read it.
No, listen. I wish I could talk to y'all about this. We had an entire fraternity system in high school that was like the black HBCU fraternities, but just a high school version. I don't know anybody who's we were pledging cats like fraternity. Our band was just like a college band. Like all of the stuff that you see with the home halftime stuff. When we came out there, it was not a game. It was, and when I say it was, this is one of the things that at least has helped me.
Well, you got that, and you on the football team, you gonna sacrifice your whole body out there that day.
That piece get to hit you. They come hot.
Yeah.
It was so lit. We would come back early from halftime to watch the show.
Dang.
And I don't know how much y'all should. You know that song "So Glad to See You Again"? They're like every black band play.
Yeah.
We used to play it every time, boy. And we would
shut it down.
We could be down by 20. We coming back. You play how. And the reason I say that is because that same community that has so much joy, we go to a house party, somebody shoot it up.
Yep.
But everybody be like, man, and then we just run. We run with an attitude, man. Listen, we can't have anything nice. But those two things are happening together
at the same time.
And the intellectual questions that were being pressed were real. So I learned about the word nihilism when I got to college. I experienced nihilism in my high school, where I had to explain to some like one of my friends, like, why should I stay in school?
Yeah.
Right. Explain to me why any of this makes any sense.
Yes.
Why don't I utilitarianism? Why don't I do whatever I gotta do to get ahead?
Absolutely.
And I couldn't just say trust Jesus. I had to actually explain to this brother why you need to do that.
Yes.
And so, yes, I later got the tools to analyze different philosophical systems. But that's different from saying the actual person who you know, who if he becomes a nihilist might go and shoot somebody, hits different.
Nihilist in the hood all day long, bro.
Yes.
And so you begin to recognize it.
Yeah.
So you can kind of go in there and say, oh, this brother will shoot me.
Yeah.
This other brother doesn't actually want to shoot me, but if the circumstances kind of happen, he's front
if he gets
friends.
Pushed there,
yeah, but like this other brother is looking for
this
the
dude is a demon. This dude is as we say in the streets, this dude is a demon.
He about that life.
He is really about that. He
don't want to tell no jokes.
No, he don't talk to nobody.
Keep his hoodie on.
He keep his hoodie on. He got black Air Forces on.
Let him live.
He got black Forces.
He
ashy.
It doesn't matter.
And nobody says a word.
Yeah, nobody.
You don't hand him lotion. You just let him.
It don't matter. What's up, homie?
You're right, though, man.
And so what I'm saying is, when I talk about my intellectual development happened in that context, it was, I had to figure out who I was under pressure.
Yeah.
Under pressure. And I feel like that context was beautiful. It was all the kind of black life in one place. One of the things living outside of Chicago is that you see the same kinds of things. People, the way they talk about Chicago is how they talk about black people. They see kind of the violence in the city.
Sure.
And they kind of go, that's Chicago.
Yeah.
Then I can show you, well, hold on. Come to Progressive Baptist. We can show you another piece of Chicago.
Yeah.
Come to some of our art scenes.
Sure.
And so Chicago contains the complexity of the black experience. And so getting people to see, and so if I told a story that's violence in Chicago or violence in the Black South, everybody would say, amen.
Sure.
But I said, in the midst of that was true. There was also beauty.
Yeah.
And articulating both of those things to me is a realer account of black life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
good,
I love that you said that, because I think that one thing that folks will note that they know about me and KB is that we are very proud of being from Southside St. Pete, and that's why we have that's why the podcast is called Southside Rabbi, because it's an ode to where we are from.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beautiful things that I think that I appreciate about the hood, is that there's brokenness and beauty there at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm proud of coming from such a place, because I feel like it is giving us a perspective on life that is a bit different than my perspective would have been if I was just raised in a place like the suburbs. Now, there's brokenness everywhere.
Absolutely.
That no one is saying that I'm from the hood, you from the suburbs, you don't experience brokenness in the suburbs, or, some suburbs are hood, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And, you only really get the real life down here.
Yes.
But what I am saying is that there is both beauty and brokenness there.
At the same
And
time.
it caused, I think, us as young Christians, we got saved very young by God's grace. I was 16. I think you were 16 too.
Yeah.
But when I met you, you were 17.
Yeah.
And so it caused us to have to reimagine and think about, well, what does this mean for us to be Christian in a place like this?
Yes.
What does it mean for us? And what does it mean for me to be Christian in a place where all of my friends are still in the streets?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean that, I, as KB know, like I have a friend, my boy, I ain't gonna say his name, but what does it mean for him to come to the crib and say, man, you've been telling me about the gospel. I brought all my cousins, tell them about what you've been telling me.
Yeah.
And then a year later, he murdered somebody, he's in jail for life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it causes you to think about how does God enter into this?
Yes, bro.
And
I love that.
It
It makes me think about that today, right now. The Son of God is on the right hand of the Father. And you know what? Peter calls him in Acts. Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Yes.
Today.
Right now.
He's from there.
Today, he's from there.
What I want to say.
That's crazy to think about.
What I want to say about that is I think that when one of the things that happens to me, and the things you think about when you write it, I was writing that book. When you come from those places, to me, it changes how I consume news. And what I mean by this is important. This is important. So someone gets killed by the police, and inevitably, they tell you the rap sheet of the person.
Yeah.
He did this, and this.
Yeah.
People, they extrapolate from that, this is what they would have been in the future.
Right.
So whatever happened to them, they deserved it.
Yes.
But immediately, I think of somebody who I knew who might have had a rap sheet like that.
Yeah.
Who was actually complicated. Who could have been on and off drugs at any given moment.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Who was trying to take care of their family, and who might have been through people who have bad stretch, who are on the streets for 6 months or a year, then they get off the streets, or people who kind of turn around at the end. And what I'm saying to this, if you believe the whole point of Christianity is your story is never over.
Yeah.
So when you tell me someone did something that ended their story, therefore God could have never done. I said you don't believe the same gospel that I believe.
It's a different gospel.
So the entire media logic of saying, let's look at this person's past to determine what they deserved in the present. I was like, you didn't know anybody who grew up there.
Yeah.
You didn't know anybody who was actually down bad.
Yes.
Like bad as it can get.
Right.
Yes.
And who then became something else.
Yes.
The reason I tell this story about like the drive-by shooting,
Uh-huh.
it relates to that. I've thought a lot about this. Like I was 16 years old, and they're shooting up my house. I thought about this a lot. If I died in that moment, they would, and the person who they was with was a known felon. They said, young Huntsvillian killed by young, known felon. At the time, I didn't put this in the book. I was on a list of potential basically like what do you call it, like a gang list in Huntsville.
Really?
Yeah, I was on the list. That's a conversation for another day.
Really?
So they would have said like young felon known by the police to be a potential risk, shot and killed. People would have said he got exactly what he deserved.
Man.
And it would have been Esau McCaulley, bro.
And I just like, well, if that is true of them misjudging me, I don't trust anybody to give an assessment on a life but God.
Right.
So every single death I treat like a tragedy.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of having a thief on the cross and believe that he can change? Literally minutes to live.
Yeah.
Right.
Minutes.
Last second. Knocking on death's door.
Is ticking.
Right.
It ain't like he got cancer unless you got 8 months or something.
Right,
He's like, no, bro,
he's
you
about to
on
die
the cross.
today. Right.
Yes.
It's over for
You're
you.
in the chair and death row. He says,
it's over.
Yeah.
And it's like, before we put the needle in, yes, I want to get right. Good, we'll take you.
Right.
So then, how does that impact how we process everything that we see? Every single death.
Right.
And so I always see my neighborhood when I see those things happen.
Yeah.
And I just say, y'all lying.
Yeah.
Y'all lying.
Yes,
in
sir.
the sense of you could tell me for a fact that because they had this rap sheet, they could never be more than that. That's the denial of the power of God.
Come on. That's what that is.
That's true.
A statement of unbelief.
It
actually is.
Yep.
And so I know this might seem like, maybe this is Christian logic. I lament everybody who dies. But for me, if you had yourself together, wife, kids, love the Lord, whatever, and you die, I am sad.
Yeah.
But I at least said this person found their way before they left.
Yeah.
I can be at peace with that.
Yeah.
Amen.
But bro, if you were a mess, I'm actually more heartbroken by that.
Yes.
Right.
Because your story is just like, can the grace of God potentially redeem all of this? But yeah, I gotta search. I gotta dig under the rug. But yeah, but like if something happens to me, y'all might be sad. But like I wrote my books. I love the Lord. We good. Right. And so what I'm saying is
elicit more compassion that the redemption didn't get to fully bloom.
Yes.
Right.
And so what I'm saying is the more broken you are, the more deserving of protection you are. And that's what I'm trying to, because maybe if you guys talked about this, if you grow up in those places, you're just almost waiting on a miracle.
That's right.
That's
There's
exactly what
actually a
it's like.
documentary on Netflix entitled "Waiting for Superman."
Yeah,
which is exactly what folks are feeling. They're waiting for Superman to come and do something.
Yeah.
And so not everybody in my family isn't like everybody in my neighborhood. I'm just like, man, I can't be the person to help you for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But I just hope you stay alive long enough to see the goodness of God.
Yeah.
And anytime someone passes, I'm like, man, what could God have done with another 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
And so I do believe that like impoverished communities and people who are breaking the law, their lives are extremely precious because they're at the height of their brokenness.
Yeah.
And so that just impacts the way that I perceive and process what I see. And that's what I try to write about. I try to write about.
No, it's all through here. You
Yes.
feel it. And it's crazy that the Savior that stands at the head of this thing that we're doing in Christianity is marked by death on a cross, man. That he's surrounded by 2 criminals. And there is that powerful moment on Calvary where redemption is full bloom in seconds.
Bro, don't get me preaching.
Please
preach.
He dying, but he still got time to minister to somebody. Like, bro, I love y'all. Listen to some, but my evagelism ends. Like, I'm trying to process. Like, if you,
that's right. On my deathbed, my nurse says, "How can I know Jesus?"
I'm like, I ain't got time for this. I'm bleeding out. I don't. One of the other interesting things about, maybe this is my own flaw. One of the interesting things about the book is there's 2 or 3 moments where there's someone who's passing, and I don't have those magical words.
Yeah.
Or like there's a big moment. There's a big moment where these things are happening, where I can't figure out what to do. You just kind of dumbstruck.
Yeah.
Right. Like the moment is too big for you.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to think that on the cross, like human history is shifting. The entire world is being made new. But he got enough presence of mind to look at one person. Like, bro, I'm saving the world over here. You got to hold that. He's like, no, I got this, right?
Yes.
Let me minister to this brother, this last brother, and then he dies. That shows you like how consistently the heart of our Savior was turned towards humanity.
Woo.
And for me, I'm not Jesus. None of us are Jesus. But it does mean that, like, how can we consistently keep before us the brokenness of the world and the opportunity for redemption?
Yes.
And how do you live in such a way that you make that possible? And so, in some ways, How Far to the Promised Land, in parts, there's sections of it where I'm like, I couldn't do it at the time. But in the book, I can do it. And when I'm not talking about rewriting history. Like, you can't, like, I tell people, you can't rewrite history, but you can write an ending to it. You can say, okay, I couldn't figure out what God was up to in the moment. I didn't come through the way that I wanted to. Let me put it on paper. So that I could then, because everybody has this moment like, man, I blew it. You think in your head, I blew it. You say, but now, one of the good things about telling your stories, you can say, you know, there's this point, which it's weird because it's almost indulgent in the book, because I'm writing the book and one of my other cousins died. There's 5 of them on that side of the family. Only me and my brother live. And so he's dying. And I remember it was such a black man moment. He goes, my mom's telling me, they sent him home on hospice. And I called the brother and he said, man, I'm good. Like, bro, we immediately, like, we lied.
What?
Yeah, we lied. He's like, I'm good. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, but you're not good. You're dying. Yeah. But the amount of times we lied to each other, how you doing? We good? And I said to him, we're not good. We died. You're dying. And I wish that I had, in that moment, this articulate present, like, I don't know, like this kind of like poetic thing that you would do in the book. I'm like, Jesus loves, like, I'm just like just trying to say something. Like, how do you say to someone who's actually dying, who you've told, you know, like, about Jesus like a million times? Like, what do you say? Like, the stakes are higher. Like, I don't know what it was. And so I felt so bad about it. It's funny, it's what you do, man. I call my mama. I said, Mama, you gonna have to go do this work. Because I was out of town. I'm like, so she goes back, and my mom like reads. My mom is like a G. She like reading the Psalms to this brother. And she was like, my mom, she doesn't play. She's like, they brought him the sheet that you gotta find, the Do Not Resuscitate. DNR.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes, what is this? And she goes, do not resuscitate. He doesn't know. What it means when you die, not to bring you back. And he goes, oh man, as we signed it, I didn't think I would go out like that. Man, I would have been a mess in that moment.
Yeah.
My mom was like, she said, nobody wants to die like this, but you're going to die because you don't play. You need to make your peace with God. Bro, the way that she did that so smooth.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what needed to be said.
I'm just like, Jesus love you. I'm like, my mom, she like, I've been through some stuff, baby. Baby, the letter means you not getting up when they put you to sleep again.
Right.
She said, and this is like, and I talk about this, man. My mom, and she called me after this. I said, did he say anything? Bro, what he said, like, it's the sad, to me, it's one of the sadder parts of the book. Cause he's like, man, we talk about people being Christian. In that context, a lot of people are Christian. The brother said, I believed in Jesus. He did. Yeah. Whatever else he did, I think that was genuine.
Yes.
He's like, I believe that God's gonna save me. I believe what he said is true. Gets to the very end of his life and says to my mom, I should have listened. Bro.
Yeah.
And like, I almost didn't put it in the book because it sounds pietistic.
Yeah.
It sounds pietistic.
Sure.
But if David met it. My mom, she don't lie. If he said he ain't messing with God, she would have said, baby, he told me to tell y'all he should have listened. And the life with God was better. I'm like, bro, and so I'm sitting there, and this is happening when that section is happening while I'm writing the book.
Man.
So in other words, I'm talking about these members of my family. 2 of them had already passed when I started writing the book. It was the 3 of us who were alive. Yeah. My brother, me, and him. Mm-hmm. And I'm writing that chapter, and he dies. Man. So I put it in there, even though chronologically it doesn't fit,
Right.
precisely because it's like it's the unfolding of that stuff. And how do you make sense of that? And you say, okay, I'm glad this brother lived. I mean, I'm glad that he found the Lord. I'm glad that he made peace with God before he passed.
Yes.
But that's sad.
Yeah, bro.
Yes. It's
And
still
it's
sad.
sad.
Right.
But
very
so how do you? So then, if we spent holidays together, you see again Thanksgiving, and like there was 5 of us, right? Now there's 2 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, and how do you, and do you say to the, and do you want as a writer, you don't want to be heavy-handed.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go like, man, y'all don't want to, do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But did that brother earn the right to tell his story? And if it was me who had said it, y'all don't want to wait too long, life with God was better, I would never put it in the book.
Sure.
But he earned the right through his death to give his final statement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's tons of places in the book. There's this other part that's like, I don't want to give the whole thing away, but like when like my great grandmother says she hears God talking to her.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, listen, y'all cannot believe it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you
Have
what
at
she.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
But like, she has earned the right
Yeah.
to tell her story.
Yes.
Right.
And so there's parts of the book that may seem almost miraculous or trite, but the truth is, sometimes God teaches, like sometimes God comes to us in ways that are unsettling
Yeah.
and surprising, and the people who suffered those things had earned the right to tell their story.
Absolutely.
And so I hope that
So good.
and so when I think about that, I'm just like, well, okay, God rescued him, but can we write something? Can I write something? Can I do something? Can I serve people in such a way that people get to experience more of the fruit of God's victory in their life?
Yeah.
And that's what I really want. I want to say like,
Right.
like the whole point of like his story, my father's story is to say, God will rescue you,
Yes, he will. Yes.
but like maybe you don't got to go through all of that.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Absolutely.
Right. Maybe you don't have right.
Maybe there's another path for you.
Yeah,
man.
it
That's
feels like it's
powerful.
funny that you say that because it feels like when I read the story about your father passing,
Yeah.
it was it does seem like a movie, but I believe it, of course.
You can actually
What-
Google it.
Yeah, when
Backed up by the Google.
yeah, backed up by the Googles, fact check it. It felt like what I was reminded of. I was like, this feels like Moses not entering the promised land, but getting to see it. It's like
Yeah.
I could see it. I know it's there, but I don't get to put my foot in it.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, man, and I think that Moses would say
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
learn from my story. I think if Moses would speak, I mean,
Yeah.
Moses has spoken in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But if we can interview Moses
Pull him up.
on Southside Rabbi, we can pull him up.
And leave
I
rocks
think that
alone.
Moses would right.
Don't hit that rock.
Right.
Fall
I
back.
think that
Don't
Moses
mess
would
with
talk
rocks.
about what the rock meant. Like I think that he would say, God rescued me.
Yeah.
He allowed me I got to see the promised land. But I want y'all to put y'all foot in the promise. I want y'all to step on the promised land,
Yeah,
man.
boy.
Learn from,
So
you know what I mean?
One
That's
of
good
one
music.
of the interesting things about the language is promised land, but there's I think 3 sections. One of the sections is called the section is called called the vine and the fig tree.
Yeah.
Because if I could just be fully literary, sometimes you got to make
Please.
some
Brother, please.
We're all about that.
No, some sacrifices to being somewhat marketable. But if I had called the book "A Vine and the Fig Tree," y'all wouldn't have been ready for it. But the passage actually that was motivating the promised land language, actually I think comes from Micah, where it says they would beat their swords into plowshares and they would study war no more,
Yeah.
and there'll be no one to make them afraid, and they're all sit on their own vine and fig tree. And so in the context, it was. The people of Israel are under distress, and the prophet is looking forward to this time where they're not going to be fighting anymore. There's going to be no more danger. Everyone could be at home, their family, vine and fig tree, like 40 acres and a mule. You can just be there.
Yes.
No one's going to make you afraid.
Yes.
Right.
And so for me, the promised land did describe not just how do you get to heaven. That's not actually what it's about.
Yeah.
How do you arrive at this place where you know who you are and you know God's purposes for your life and you're surrounded by the people who love you and there's no one to make you afraid.
Shalom.
And so as a kid, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Bro, when I say to people, all I ever wanted to be was a husband and a father.
Yeah.
I didn't care about money. I just didn't want nobody shooting at me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted my own little spot.
Yes.
Right.
And so how far to the promised land, it's like figuring out what kind of path do I got to take to get there?
Yeah.
Is God the one who's going to get me to this place, right?
Yeah.
And so my father does. He glimpses it.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have just been with my family the whole time. I should have just like left all of that. He saw it.
Yes. Yeah.
But he's literally driving home.
Yeah,
man.
And so
make that reality.
Yeah, make that reality. And the funny part is like, wasn't gonna work, right? But but he was gonna
But he was trying though. He saw it and he said, I'm going after it.
And so what I'm hoping the reader sees is like, not like, what do I need to do in my own life to get to that place?
Yes.
Not of material success.
Yeah.
But a place where you're loved.
Yes.
And so that you need to be able, like, reader, you need to see, like, where are you going?
Yeah.
Right.
And where are you going to lead?
Yeah.
And what change do you need to make to kind of head in that direction?
Need to come home.
Bro, like,
I love that phrase, man.
And so, like,
I actually want to start, even in ministry, even as I'm thinking about, as I'm outside of my house, but also in my house, to use that as kind of a catch-all of, you've drifted into some things.
Yeah.
You need to go home.
Yeah.
There's this, it's funny, like, nobody read all of this. I'm going to go back all the way back to like 2017 or whatever. It was on like a blog, bro. You might have to hunt it down. But I gave a talk when I was first starting my writing career. I published it somewhere. It's called Quo Vadis. And it tells the story of Peter. It's apocryphal.
Okay.
So, Peter betrayed Jesus and all the other stuff. So in the story, there's persecution going on. I think it's either in Rome or Jerusalem. I think it's Rome. And Peter has become afraid again. And he's fleeing.
Yeah.
And he's running away from the church. And in the apocryphal story, he sees Jesus walking back towards Rome.
Yeah.
It's in Latin, so you got some Quo Vadis.
Yeah.
So, where are you going? This is what Peter asked Jesus. And Jesus says, I'm going back to be with my people. And according to the apocryphal story, Peter turns around and goes back into Rome, which is where him and Paul are eventually martyred. And so Peter returns home. So in the article I wrote, I'd done all of this stuff as a writer, as an academic, but I felt like I'd been separated from the people. The academy does different things to you.
Oh yeah.
And I said to them, like, nobody was reading. I said, Quo Vadis, I'm going home. I told them, like, nobody. And I said, I am going back to write things for the community to shape me.
Yes.
In the hopes that they might find their way home. That was before Reading While Black. It was before the New York Times, before How Far to the Promised Land. I had this conviction that I needed to because there's certain things I can't do. Like I can't do what you do. Listen, I'm barely on the beat. Like I'm like hanging on for dear life.
Listen, I'm barely on the beat.
Like I'm sitting in church, man. I'm like worshiping the Lord. Then they start clapping. So okay, we're gonna clap. I said, don't do the double clap. Oh Lord. Now I'm trying to I'm just holding on. Like I just don't want anybody to see. Like I'm just chasing it, right? You know what I mean? Like, don't do the complicated clap, y'all. Let's just do the
regular, 2
and 4.
You don't talk about when they do like that. I don't do all of that. Don't sway. Don't
line dance either. Don't electric slide either.
Listen, don't.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can't do that, right? And so, but what I can do is write something. I can't even preach like some of these people preach, and I can't do it. I said, what can I actually do to serve my community? I said, well, what I can give to the community is to write something that might be useful to them.
Yeah.
And to write something that is from that place.
Yes.
Because one of the things that happened, I think, in certain spaces, there was a crisis.
Yeah.
In the sense of is this authentically Black? Is this that or the other?
Yeah.
Is this real? I'm like, I didn't have any crisis. I know where I'm from.
Yeah. No questions asked.
And I know exactly how Black Christians are in those spaces.
Yeah.
So when I started talking about like the black church and black faith in the South, this ain't a hypothesis.
Right.
There's some stuff that might get mad. Something in the footnotes in Reading My Black, because if you know, you know.
Right. I mean,
you know. If you know, you know.
You know. And so
that's true.
It's like, what can you give? I mean, maybe that's an appointment. Like, everyone has to ask the question, what gift has God given to them, and how can they use that gift for the glory of God?
Yeah.
And like everybody can't be everybody else, but you can be who you can be. And when I started doing this stuff, they were obviously black writers. I'm not saying like tons of amazing black writers.
Right.
Douglas, who you mentioned earlier, is my inspiration.
Yeah.
But there was the models for people who were doing what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
who like felt creative, who felt like they wanted to do multi-genre. I've done kids books.
Yes.
I've done like theology books.
Mm-hmm.
I've done memoirs. But I just tried to be faithful in it.
Yes.
And maybe that's what I would say. It's like, if God has called you to do something, like, just do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if God actually calls you to do it,
Yeah.
He will bless the people who He intended to bless by it.
Right. Amen.
I can't promise you nothing else.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't promise you. I can't promise you
need to
nothing.
be encouraged by that.
Encouraged by that.
Right.
Yes.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
No, I
anyway.
feel that 100%, man. That's really good. I'm thinking about my journey as a Christian hip hop artist, and is a truncated version of why there are a few. It's not a lot of us, but there's a handful of Christian hip hop artists that make a living off of what they do. The vast majority of us, equally important, equally valued by God, equally blessed, are doing what we do to reach people for ministry's sake. You know what I'm saying? Most folks are not writing songs and now, paying their mortgage. You know
I don't know any full-time. I got a job.
Yeah.
I'm taking time off work right now.
For sure. Yeah.
I teach.
Most
Yeah.
that's the situation for most Christian hip hop artists. Those of us that have, and Lecrae would be the golden child, that have been, indigenous. They are indigenous hip hop artists. They came from. They did not learn about hip hop through observing it.
Yeah.
They didn't have a friend that was involved in hip hop. They didn't grow up just liking it on MTV.
Right.
Like this is the life they lived. They grew up in. That's how they talk, how they sound. When you hear them talk on stage, you hear them talk off stage, it sounds the same.
Yes.
That kind of artist, Lecrae, a few other folks. I'm thinking about like the Grits. But as far as we're concerned, Lecrae basically embodied that as being the real deal, authentically, in love with the Lord Jesus, and now able to make a living off of this in ways that most of us can't. There were others, cross movement,
Yeah.
But Cray was different because he was able to cross over, not into the mainstream, although he did have some crossover into the mainstream.
Yeah.
I would say probably the lion's share of his crossover success was CCM. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was able, in some ways, to be the face of not only Christian hip hop, but the face of CCM at one point, where he was the guy. If you can test me on that, I'm sure there's other folks that have other opinions. But as far as I can discern, he was headlining the Rock and Worship Road shows.
Yeah.
He was headlining the Winter Jams.
Right.
When you went to a Lecrae concert, okay, if you looked at that parking lot, Dave Chappelle said it best.
Yeah.
That brother said, if I banned white people from my show, I would leave with $1,500 tonight. Okay?
Man.
The fact of the matter is, it was a bunch of youth groups from the sort of evangelical superstructure. I mean, that's where, excuse my superstructure language, but I'm just saying.
Neo-Marxism, here it is. No, just joking. Go ahead.
I didn't want to say anything. I was going to let you live. You're
You're
Marxist.
going to start talking about the means and modes of production.
That's right.
No, go ahead.
So, anyways, as they were taking power from their oppressors, I'm just playing. Anyways, so if you went to that, I mean, the shows, I mean, you go to any hip hop concert, it's
Same.
largely majority culture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You go to a Lil Wayne concert?
I've never been to a hip hop concert in my life.
You haven't been?
No.
Yeah.
I went.
They're
I
largely-
actually get write my. Hopefully, IRS is cool with this. I get to write off my concert when I go to
research.
Yeah. But I mean, when I'm going to even do research type
Yeah.
stuff, it could be J. Cole or Kendrick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was,
That's what I'm
was
saying,
basically
yeah.
like the theme. He had the theme for Black Lives Matter. With all we gonna be all right.
Yeah.
That place
That
is
majority
50
places-
to 60%.
Yeah.
Majority culture.
Unless
So-
you performing in Club 112, that's what it's going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is taking too long. The point is not that big to take this long to set it up. But the what I noticed is there was a home in the billion-dollar industry of Christian contemporary music for folks like Lecrae. Now, Lecrae was just being himself, but what are some of the things that they loved about him? Lecrae was theologically sound. He was very articulate. And even that word articulate, when you use that for an African-American person, can be complicated and sometimes triggering. Because it can be a sort of, you're not like the rest of them.
You're exceptional.
Yeah, you're not like them or those guys. I had a great conversation with a sister one time. I had her and her husband and some other folks over to the crib. I think you might have been there too when I was doing a think tank for my first Dove performance, because I was going to have a SWAT team on stage, and I wanted to show, I was inspired by the Boston 10 Points Coalition about how we could work. We can acknowledge that the disparity, we can acknowledge the actual conflict, but then find productive ways to confess and then have points of redemption to move forward as a unit, with police officers working, with the law enforcement working with community leaders. And I was trying to display some of that in my performance by having on the screen jarring images of police brutality, and also this kind of hostile moment between me and the SWAT team. And I'll never forget it. It was our dear sister Keena. She said to me, she said, "Do you think that this might communicate to an audience that is largely observing the police brutality conflict on the outside?" They're watching us talk about it and saying, "Hey, what I never went through that."
Right.
Y'all, it seem like y'all are just disparaging the police.
Yeah.
Do you think you might run the risk of showing yourself to be one of the good guys who wouldn't have issues with the police because you are, KB.
You're KB, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And, the Bible guy and, all that stuff, and kind of separate from, basically, in their minds, see you as the exception, but they'll keep all their original prejudices and perspectives. And I didn't think about that. And I saw in my life many ways in which I can feed this narrative of exceptionalism, and I'm not like them. And I have friends who have leaned into the not like themness. Well, they won't say, they'll allow folks to say things that they know.
Because not like themness could pay your bills.
That's right. Exactly. And it creates a kind of conflict where you are walking around in these industries having to not only think about what it is that you're doing, to doing your art or whatever, and things you want to say, but you got to also not disparage a community that you're trying to reach, so that you could have better footing in this space. I'll give one more example of this. I wrote this song called New Portrait. It was a remake of the Truth song, Portrait.
Yeah. I remember this. Wait, did that come out? Or
it came out 2017. It was on Today We Rebel. It came out a while ago.
I got to tell you, listen, I'm not new. I'm not brand new.
Okay,
hold on. You got to play me to the left.
Play me, cuz.
I've heard Portrait and New Portrait.
So you heard both of them. Okay,
Christ of the Culture.
That's right.
There we go.
That's right.
So you got it. See?
Yeah, that's right.
I pulled this card. Yeah, there we go.
So the Truth version was more so like addressing the Da Vinci Code.
Right.
I wrote my song because I had just left, I'm just going to say it, the Uhuru movement in Southside St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
I went up to their offices. I was there for about an hour, and we had very good conversations about the problem. But then when I started talking about the solution, it got really, really hostile. And I didn't get super hostile, but it got tense.
Yeah.
And the idea that Jesus had anything to say to racial injustice was, to them, the most counterproductive, counterintuitive, backwards thing ever, because they were like, Jesus is creating the injustice in their mind, right?
That's what they thought.
So I wrote this song for them, saying, no, you need to understand that Jesus was not a white man who was basically, I have a book on my iPad called The Negro, a Beast or Image Bearer, and they were arguing that the Negro was a beast. This was written in the antebellum South. And one of the points that the author makes in the book is that when you look, he takes a picture of Jesus that was drawn by somebody and then puts it next to a picture of a Negro. And says, if you see how the pseudoscience
not image Jesus. I said Jesus. I've heard I said Jesus. I never heard of image. I don't even know how to put that into a word.
Was it crazy?
Yeah, folks so wrong. They just like you to be quiet. Like,
Like, come on,
I didn't have an answer for this wrongness.
This was supposed to be a theological work of that day. They were like, if you can see the bone structure of the Negro next to the bone structure of Jesus.
Yeah, the reason that their cheeks are so high is because their brains are small.
Exactly.
Like stupid pseudoscience.
Bro, you're so wrong.
Yes. So I wrote that
crazy
song to that community. That's absolutely who I wrote it for. In fact, I remember my uncle who was he was drunk out of his mind when I was talking to him. And he pulled me out on the block, and he's in tears, walking me up and down the block, showing me all the stuff that's happened. I won't use the language he used, but he said, if you can't make music that resonates with these people, you are wasting your time. That's what he told me. And I wrote Today We Rebel from that standpoint, where I wanted to make it clear, I am here to serve where God is showing me the problem is. I am not going to dress up in a way that is more appropriate for whatever the industry might like. I am no good to the industry if I am just parroting what y'all want me to say.
Right.
My good is go. So anyways, all that to say, I wrote this song, New Portrait, and some folks got really mad at me. Why would you need to point out that Jesus isn't white? Are you trying to say Jesus is black? Well, or is this some sort of liberation theology kind of stuff happening? Anyways, go ahead.
No, I think that what happens is people are listening in to your side of the conversation, but they don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And so that happens to me all of the time. I wrote this article on like the resurrection of black bodies.
Yeah.
Folks got so mad at me for that, man, because the whole point was they had lynched black bodies.
Yes. Right.
And so God statements to those lynchings was no, and that's proven by the resurrection.
Yes.
Right.
So the resurrection is the ultimate rejection of anti-black, the anti-black assault on the African American body.
Yes.
Right.
So when I rise in my black body, it said that God thinks that I'm more valuable than the people who my ancestors who were lynched. That's the point.
Yeah.
He was like, so you saying that like the resurrection only matters people? I was like, no, bro. For someone whose family, this is the story. Then
this is the questions they're asking.
That's the question. And so I think that part of what, in other words, when you try to serve a community that is often neglected, sometimes the majority of the community is saying, why aren't you serving me?
That's right. We're used to it being about us, and it feels like it's just not about us.
And
we're not included.
Imagining the entry into that conversation. One of the hardest things to do, maybe this is the reason why people ask, like, why do you write so much? It's because there's this chance line. This is my part, nobody else speaks.
Yep.
And so everybody's always trying to define who we are and what we're about. And they're trying to, like, people will take your story and use the story for their purposes.
Yeah. Right.
You talk about this. Like, they will say, okay, KB, you're useful for my market if I put you in this place. Yeah. Well, then how do you battle it? You battle it by the content that you produce.
Right. That's true.
And so I feel like in my, there's people who said, you know what? We want all of the racial analysis. Yeah. Like, we want all of the structure. Like, we want all of that. But when the Jesus bit comes in, you're doing too much.
Yes.
Or there's people who say,
felt that.
When you do the Jesus bit, like, we want the Jesus bit, but not the racial analysis.
You're talking too much about the racial stuff.
And so I said, no. Like, so that means I gotta consistently remind you, almost like self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta consistently remind you, this is who I am.
That's right.
And so in each day, each moment, each book, article, story, you're having to decide who you're going to be.
Yes.
Because you don't just like there's this thing in the Catholic Church, they talk about two forms of martyrdom. Yeah. Like I think it's called white martyrdom and red martyrdom. Red is if you're martyred, white is if you just live your whole life with Jesus.
Got you.
And so I was actually asking my kids, we were talking about Peter and John in the Bible, because Peter gets martyred and John lives to the end. Yeah. Ask my kids, which one is easier? And they all said, John. It's harder to be Peter. And I said, actually, I think it's hard to be John. Because, like, I'm not saying I want to die, but, like, you die, you made the decision, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But, bro, the more, even if God gave it to you, the more that you have, the more you are at risk.
Absolutely.
And then there's always this temptation to say, now that God's given me this, I need to protect it.
Yes.
And to consistently say every single time, man, here's the stuff that you don't like.
Yes.
That's the decision, and it's the pressure. Yes. And so when you talk about self-sabotage, it's like saying, have I allowed public perception to be shaped around my story in a way that benefits me financially? Yeah. That becomes a prison.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to write my way out every single time.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like
because to some degree we all this is kind of this is good right here. This is kind of veers from the pod a little bit, but I in some ways that's always going to be a wrestle, right? Because I have to provide a thing especially if it's my job, of course, that people are willing to engage with and pay for.
Yeah.
So, but in the midst of all of that, you can very quickly lose yourself, man,
and be miserable.
and be very much miserable.
And people say like, I want to be able to like do this, to say this, but it's outside of the brand I created.
Wow, that's true.
And so one of the advantages that I had is a blessing, even though I'm a little bit same age or older than a lot of people who kind of came into this world.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't a creative.
Yeah.
And because I was an academic, I saw a lot of like ministries.
You got to watch it.
And I was like, man, they turned on that brother.
Yes.
I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build it from the beginning as me.
Yes.
So there ain't no abandonment because we got on the train at the same stop.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
I talk about this a lot. I know
so smart.
I'm such a bad marketer because I want to talk about Reading My Black. I remember thinking, I'm writing Reading My Black. And I said, I want the blackest intro possible. That was like my idea. I said, like, what is the thing?
Outcast intro?
What I'm saying is, when I came in the door, you need to know exactly what you're gonna get.
Right.
And I was like, I didn't want any confusion. Like and they asked me. I remember they doing the cover design because actually, How Far to the Promised Land, I didn't say this. I felt like I knew I could be a little. How Far to the Promised Land is actually much more poetic and artistic.
Right. Yeah.
Because I felt comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
But when I was doing Reading My Black, I was like, I want the blackest cover possible.
He said, I
want a black power fist, an afro.
I
want a pack of Newports. I want a pack of Newports and some slit small liquor on there.
Air Force Ones on the cover.
and some Henny.
I want some slit small liquor.
I'm just joking.
And so when I said, I was literally thinking in my head, what is the blackest event I can remember in my life?
Yeah.
I said, Outcast of the Source Award.
Yeah.
That was so genius.
And I said,
got something to say.
And so what I'm saying is, I wanted to define, like in some ways, like that chapter set the tone for everything else I've written.
Yeah.
Because it puts you in that context of theology.
Yes.
And How Far to the Promised Land is a whole book in that context.
Right.
I really want to say, I don't want you to think that I fell in love with black culture.
Yeah.
After I got mad about racism and I found myself. And I'm not dismissing anybody who did that. I want people
But a lot
to
of
say,
people did do that.
Yeah.
and I want to say like, no, I'm from here and this place matters. And if you don't want to mess with me, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I didn't like, and when that may seem like too strategic in the sense of I thought I would ever have a platform. That's not what I'm saying.
Sure.
What I want to say is I never want to feel trapped in the identity I created for myself. And I saw people who, and this actually happened across, not just in black spaces. There are a lot of people and who said to themselves, I'll be measured and I'll build these relationships, black and white. And then I will cash in those relationships at strategic moments. So I'm going to build up years and years of cachet.
Yeah.
So that when it's necessary, I can cash the checks.
Yeah.
So when 2016 hit, them checks started bouncing.
It started
Right.
And people thought, wait a minute, you've known me. We've been in ministry together, black and white.
Yeah.
Right.
And they found people like, well, hold on. Oh, none of that cachet mattered. You, like, your balance was zero immediately.
Yes.
And you were over here with us.
Yes.
Yep.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to start over here.
Yeah, start over there so you don't have to
Because
get kicked over
I
there.
know none of this money is going to cash when I need it.
Yes.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who have like had to rediscover their ministry after realizing the people who they thought supported them wouldn't support them.
Oh, absolutely.
Man.
And that is and for our audience, what he just said, I cannot overstate how big of a concern that is across the Church of America right now. I mean, the whole idea of us having regression, us moving backwards as a church, has been presented in study after study after study after study, that people were willing over their politics and their allergy for centering racial kind of things, that they were willing to give up mother, father, life, limb, pastor.
Man.
I don't care who you are, how long I've known you. I don't care how faithful you say you are.
Yep.
If you did not support our God and you keep insisting that God has something to say about these particular issues in the culture, you're dead to me.
Yeah.
And
the funny thing about it, they talk a lot about like multi-ethnic churches and how they grow slower.
Yeah.
That they don't actually grow faster because if you start centering reconciliation and justice, folks leave.
Yeah.
And so it has been like a slower road. Like, I mean, there are tons, like, how far to the promised land to read while Black? We do okay, but we're not running the streets. I mean, like I have and I'm grateful for them, a group of people who support what I do because they know who I am.
Yeah.
But there is like, and I think you know this, right? I think they talk about like how I'm assuming I can't write rap. You can write a little simple little thing that people, you can get a lot of spins. You just know there's no wordplay.
Yeah.
You're like, man, like this is whack, but people like it.
Yeah.
And so like every time I sit down to write, I know what, like maybe this is one of the gifts and the curses if you understand how markets work. I know what people want.
Right. Right.
I know exactly what they want.
Yeah.
Not gonna do it.
Yeah. I love it.
Like,
I love it.
And so what I'm saying is though, but that not gonna do it happens every single time. I'm working on like 2 or 3 things right now. I'm not going to talk about them because they're New York Times pieces. I know people want me to say.
Yeah.
Right.
And I might get in trouble for it. Y'all might not invite me back on the Rabbi after this. But it's like, how do you decide to consistently be yourself? I think you have to be comfortable with saying, I'm just going to have to take what God gives me through faithfulness.
Yeah.
Right.
And not that you shouldn't be strategic, but I can't strategic my way out of authenticity.
Right.
Because that just becomes miserable.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to do and have brought to the promised land is be as honest as possible.
I love it, bro.
And say like, I came to God in the so like, I'll put it in both of those. But you have to be careful about what you say because people might read it. So in other words, when I say I came to God in the context of family trauma,
Mm-hmm.
I came to God in the context of anti-Black racism, I came to God in the context of poverty. I went into a secular academy. And the secular academy, as useful as it was, didn't have every answer that I needed.
Yeah.
But if you start saying those things, and people say, well, oh, he said this, I don't mess with him for that. And so that's fine. Like, and even like when you talk about, the first chapter, Reading My Black, it's like, it goes through all the different communities that I entered.
Yeah.
And I say, I'm not saying here, and here.
Yes.
Well, all those communities buy books.
Right. True. Very true.
I think there's this, I forget what he was talking about, but there's this Andy Mineo line. He said, I'm sure this is going to cost me some money for saying this bar.
Yeah.
And it's like, you did, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
But you might as well acknowledge it so you can say like.
I think we need it, man. I'm thinking about Frederick Douglass, in being the most photographed man of his time and why he refused to smile in the pictures.
Right.
And they're like, man, could you just
give us
when you look good on camera.
Yeah,
like,
man, you got nice teeth, man. Could you just show them?
And he's like,
is there?
No.
I feel like, y'all know y'all can't do stuff in this, but if we don't get a biopic for that brother.
Man,
it needs to be like,
I don't know how we don't.
It needs to be like 3. It needs to be 3 of them.
It needs to be a series.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the escape section.
Yeah, that's right.
The abolitionist section.
Yes.
The post-war.
The life section.
Haiti section. Like that brother, I have become convinced that he might be one of our greatest Americans.
Yeah.
Yes, I always say he's just my greatest American hero.
He's definitely my hero,
I'm just
bro.
He's an American hero, bro.
And maybe it's funny because like just reading Frederick, he was so authentically himself.
Yes.
And like I know it's exhausting to be yourself when everybody's telling you to be something else.
Right.
Yes. And there's a lot of benefit of being someone else.
Yeah.
And he's
because
like,
you can do it. There was a lot more he could have earned, a lot more places he could have went.
Yep.
That speech that he gave about what is the fourth to the Negro, we don't realize that the context of that was him giving this speech at this event that was being organized by these women who were actually for liberation.
Right. Yeah.
But they did not want him to come do that.
Right.
They wanted him to come and
just
acknowledge them and the work they were doing.
Yeah. Right.
But don't start talking about well, we're off and
the hypocrisy of the nation. Right.
That's happening right here in the North, right here in your organization.
Right.
He did all of that. He spent the beginning of it was him praising the nation.
Yeah.
Better than anyone ever has.
Right. That's so true.
There's a Fox News.
Yeah.
Okay. No one has ever had a better take on how amazing
and then
you'd have
America
been
was.
like, yo, Freddie, he is a patriot.
Man, this dude is a patriot.
And then that mug feels like he burns it down.
He burned the whole thing down. And they said that, I read, someone gave commentary on what people were feeling in the audience as they were listening to it. Again, these are allies in the audience. They said that everyone started wiggling in their seats.
Bro, there is...
You need those moments, man.
I forget which speech it is. This is the Frederick Douglass section of the podcast.
Yeah, he needs.
There's a speech that he gives, and I forget what the name of it was.
Yeah.
But it was in the context of the unveiling of the Abraham Lincoln monument.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he comes for Lincoln. I was like, bro,
Lincoln in the yes,
Lincoln
at the monument.
Yep.
That'd be like LeBron gonna get his monument.
Yeah, I believe it.
When like LeBron's getting his monument outside of LA, and they come and say, you know what, MJ to go.
Yeah, MJ is to go.
MJ is.
All these accomplishments.
This is great that he has this.
MJ's to go.
Yeah.
People are like, wow.
Did you just really do
You
that?
felt that in your soul. Like you had to get it off your chest.
I think
true, man.
I think we need that, and I also think we need to see brothers that are and sisters that are modeling that, so that I can draw courage in my moment, because perhaps we're you know folks in our audience right now might not be on a world stage, of course, but if you in your home, at your job, you got to have these moments where you are willing to remind yourself and others that you belong to God and not.
Can I tell you, like somebody who, like, so I'm reading this book. I'm writing the book, and one of the books that was coming out at the time, I think I was endorsing it or I read it.
Okay.
It was actually Truth Table's book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Kimini wrote a chapter on colorism or something.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's real.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was so inspired by that chapter in particular that it inspired me to write better.
Ooh, I love that.
And to be authentic about the things that I was actually going through.
Yes.
And I would say, like, the reason that's important is because you need people around you. I was like, man, I can't be less honest or less faithful than like these people. And like I will say there's certain people, Women of Truth Table is one of them. There's certain people who I kind of say, you know what, we don't even kick it that much. Like, I've only been on a podcast like, this is my second time.
Yeah.
But we kick it because I watch y'all.
Sure.
And I just say, even if I'm not in y'all DMs, I'm not texting y'all, I'm not tagging y'all and everything. But I say, as long as those brothers down there in Tampa are doing their thing faithfully, that encourages me to do my thing here.
Yes.
And every time I see someone who's authentically themselves, it's not what you think like, oh, Esau knows this. I watch y'all.
I love that, man.
Because I just
Thank you,
I need it as like to say I ain't crazy.
Yes.
And I just like, it encourages me when I look around and I see people who are themselves, who are comfortable in their own skin, who love the Lord, and who don't lose themselves. And we all lose ourselves, but lose themselves to find themselves over and over again in the context of this. And that's encouraging.
And
so I feel like it's important to call it out. So when you talked about being authentic yourself, I said, yep, that's exactly what I saw.
I love it.
When I was reading Truth Table when I was working on my own book.
I love it.
Right.
And actually, I think I could be wrong about this. The timeline that's in my head. But Dangerous Jesus, I think I endorsed it when I was working on this book too.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay.
Yep.
KB's over here doing his Jesus thing. Okay.
like sure.
Got to make sure we get that. And so like, it's like, I think of us as like a team. Even though we don't,
I love it.
Even we don't even practice together.
Yes.
Like we're like, it's kind of like, it's almost like you have those movies where even though we didn't have the initial gathering moment, like they all, like each chapter about a different person, you kind of follow, oh God, see what they're doing over there? Okay, y'all keep it going.
Yes.
I just want to say thank y'all for that.
Thank you, man.
We draw it, brother.
We do this. We feel the same way about you, man. When we first came across, I don't know if I think I came across you before reading While Black. I think so. But when we read Reading While Black, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
I feel seen. We feel seen.
Yes.
We were doing Southside Rabbi at the time. That's why we were like, we have to have Esau come on here because we felt like we're not crazy.
For sure.
We were like, oh, we're not crazy.
Bro, it's
you know
literally like it's like the Spider-Man meme of us all like,
right.
we in this together, man. As the Lord is raising up just offering after offering of good, biblical, conscious, spirit-filled work, honest work from books and podcasts and songs and conferences and churches. I feel like God is, as I've been traveling around, there's almost like a resurgence. You know, I remember after I think it was World War II, where there was this boom of boys that were being born after the World War II. So there was lost all these men in the war, and all of a sudden, by God's sovereignty, boys started being born to that's where the boomers come from. It was these boom of babies in response to the context or the situation the nation was in. It feels like there is a boom of good, godly, and it's being resourced to a biblical just work that is exactly what we need for the time to make up for a lot of the foolishness that the church has endured over the past 7 years.
Yeah.
And I feel as though we are comrades in that work, and it is happening. And as much as we can support whatever you are doing, as we can only do what the little bit that God has given us, but you are giving us more than we can ever give you in your work, and we want to continue to partner in ways that build the kingdom and show our honor and love for one another.
Anytime y'all need me to come back.
Oh man.
And next time I come, I'll stay for a couple of days.
Yes.
For sure.
I promise.
Yeah,
for sure.
Also, before we get, is there anything you want to say about Grits, brother? Before we're
so
our brother Esau. Speaking of coming home, our brother Esau.
I need to address this. I think I was on a podcast 3 or 4 years ago, and growing up as a kid, no one told. If you don't know better, how can you do better?
Yeah.
So I just got. We got grits, and so when I was a kid, we had those struggle cereals. So we put sugar in the cereal.
Yep.
Mom about grits, I just put sugar in the grits. That's how you did it, right? Sugar in the cornflakes, sugar in the grits.
Right.
Didn't know any better. Nobody told me.
Right. It's a broken, fallen world.
The internet asked the question. I said, sugar on the grits. What do I know? I come on nobody knows. I got like 20 Twitter followers at this point. I'm living like this, free and happy.
I'm living like this.
And just
unconfronted.
Yeah.
You confront me on the podcast, and I get tagged for like years. And at first, I'm hard-hearted, because you don't want to. Like
you were pushing back at first.
And I said, you know what? Let me actually. Truth be told, my mother-in-law came to my house.
What?
Made some grits and said, just eat this.
Right. Wow.
And I ate it, and I was like, you know how you just realize like you've been tripping.
Right. Yeah.
Like, hey, you know what?
Like you can't lie.
Right.
I remember I'm a huge LeBron fan, and sorry, this is a long way to answer that question. And I was listening to Jay-Z, and he said every fourth quarter like the Mike Jordan him. And I was like, man, Michael is pretty good. Like you couldn't say that bar about LeBron. I was like, oh,
you definitely could.
I like called my friend who Justin Gibney. I was like, man, I think it was Charlie. It's one of them. I was like, man, I like LeBron, but that was
pretty hard. I can't deny
every fourth quarter like Mike Jordan. I was like, I knew exactly what he meant. So, anyways, that's how I felt when I had the grits. I was like, man, they right.
I love it, bro.
And so I
said,
you
repented on the largest stage.
I'm writing in the New York Times, and I put in a line. I said, like, we're talking about food in the new creation in heaven, and I said there'll be grits there, no sugar.
Right.
Do you think anybody read that? No. I'm still catching strays to this day.
I came at you after that.
Yeah, I came back. He tagged me.
And it happened again.
It happened again. It happened again. So I'm getting harassed.
I'm sorry,
I had to leave Twitter to go to Threads because of grit slander.
Sorry, bro.
Everybody else getting trolled.
Y'all stop throwing strays.
I'm over here on Threads.
At Esau.
We have to forgive, man.
We have to forgive. We have to practice forgiveness and grace.
My first thread was like, I like grits. They just let me start in a good place.
I love
that you put in the New York Times article that the redeemed form of grits is that they will never have sugar in them.
Yes,
sugar will not be 100 yards away from grits.
You know what I'm saying? But that's what I'm saying though. People love your fall. Like what I said. But nobody celebrated. Like they said in the Bible, there's joy in heaven.
Yes.
No joy on earth.
No, bro.
Like you should have never had that sugar in your grits. Like you should have never done that.
Hey,
like, bro, what you want me to be?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, internet. I'm sorry. Leave me alone.
Please.
Leave me alone.
Forgive him. The prodigal son has returned.
Hey, we got to put it's about 3 to 5 business days on forgiveness. So we'll
see how it goes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Southside Rabbi, Esau McCaulley. Make sure you get.
And we'll have the link.
How Far to the Promised Land? We will have the link in the notes. Also, make sure you check out all of the wonderful pieces that he is writing for New York Times.
Yes.
I promise you will not be disappointed. We love y'all. A me and the dream.
K did the second letter.
Peace.